Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Every time I come out here into the cottage garden, I am surprised and delighted because all last winter it was about taking out, taking away, removing. And then I did do some planting. I planted roses and hundreds of tulips, moved the forget-me-nots about, but there wasn't anything to see really. But now the tulips have come through and I am so pleased with the way that they look. And I'm always searching for that magical apricot peachy pink. It's become a little obsession of mine. But actually this tulip, this is called Apricot Perfection, pretty much is it. It could be a little bit more apricot-y, but I tell you what, it's absolutely lovely. And you have come on the one day when I think they're looking their best, because the weather, of course, has been awful. They're battered, they've been rained on, the wind is blowing up, they'll probably be all over the place in a day or two's time. But for today, they're just a joy. Now, coming up on today's programme, Adam gets a backstage pass to a stunning garden near Dublin, which belongs to the U2 bass guitarist, Adam Clayton.
If you look back at your life and I suppose in some sense the madness of it, this is an incredible antidote to that.
I feel I'm lucky because it was all instinctive. I didn't know what this would mean to me. I didn't know that this would be a place that would draw me back and give me such kind of peace.
Carol continues her mission to get us all growing plants for free, and this time by division.
There are 2 times during the year when it's great to divide plants. One is the autumn and one is right now in the spring.
We go to Arundel Castle in West Sussex to revel in a truly phenomenal display of tulips.
This is an incredibly special time of year. It just looks wonderful. For at least 3 to 4 weeks we have this cacophony of colour. Some of our early tulips look amazing, and then of course the mid-tulips then follow suit, and then the later tulips.
And I'll be adding some deliciously fragrant climbers to my new scented garden. But first of all, I've got turf to lay. Now, laying turf can be seen as the easy option to sowing seed, but that really isn't the case, because whether you're sowing seed or laying turf, you need to prepare the ground in exactly the same way, because the one thing that turf doesn't do is cover up any sins. So if you've got a bit of a dip or a bit of a lump, the turf will reveal that. Now, grass loves good drainage. So always fork it over. Get in there and just break it up like that. And what I'm trying to do is get rid of the compaction. Where you have compaction, you invariably get moss and also various other weeds will grow. So we want to get rid of that if we possibly can. And then on this side, take out any weeds that you find, any big stones. Right, having broken it up, and rake it until not only it's a fine tilth, but it's as smooth and as level and as even as you can make it. Then you want to tread all over it. Now, that may seem counterintuitive, but what you do is very lightly, just firm, you're not stamping, but what you're trying to get rid of are any little dips. And then I rake it again. That will drop a little. So if you're coming up to the edge of a path, the grass should be proud of the path, not least so when you mow it, you don't hit whatever the material the path is made out of. Now, turf comes like this in rolls, and if you get it and you can't use it for a little bit, unroll it, because obviously there's no light getting to the grass, and it mustn't dry out, so you may need to water it to keep it damp. Right, that goes there. Now, there is a strip of bare soil, and either I can cut a fillet of turf and put it in, or I can leave it and it will grow out. I think at that width, I'd leave it. Now, there are lots of different kinds of grass, and not all turf is the same. The predominant grass you find in turf mixes is ryegrass. Now, ryegrass is really tough, and it's very hard wearing and perfect if you've got kids, dogs, if it's a path where you're going to go up and down, which of course this is. So what I've chosen is a ryegrass and fescue mix. But if you want a fine lawn, then you want much less or even no ryegrass in the mix. Now, when you lap two joints together, the edges will dry up. So you need to make sure they are absolutely tight together. Don't leave a gap. If I take this strip now and roll it out, you can see that it's much too long. I only need a small part of it. So we'll cut this along the edge. Right. Now, if I leave this small section on the end, it's more likely to dry out. So what you do is pull the bigger section down, trying not to break it, and take this piece and put it in the middle, like that. Now that's very easy. That's simply a strip that we're laying down. If it's a lawn, always go across the shortest length and lay it in courses like bricks, so no two joints ever overlap. And build it up. Use boards, and you tread only on a board which spreads the load, and then don't tread on it again for at least 2 weeks. And don't cut it until you see really strong growth. And that means the roots will be established. Cut it very lightly, leave at least an inch of growth, and do that for the first couple of months. Get a nice strong root system, then you can cut it short and it's fine. Well, while I'm working on the rest of this, we're going to join Carol down in her own garden in Devon, where she's making more plants for free.
You know, you can feel it. You can just feel the spring. You're aware that everything's beginning to get going. Everything's shooting up. Every day there's new things to see. Just the best time of the year for growing plants. Come on, Fief. Come on. Just over 6 weeks ago, I sowed my first lot of seeds. And just look at these. I wanted to show you the progress of these. I hope you've been growing along with me and yours are like this too. These were the sweet peas, sowed in a homemade modular tray, just to pun it with cardboard. And not only have they made little short, really sturdy shoots, but look at this. You can actually see the roots. Well, I'm pleased with those sweet peas, but I'm thrilled to bits with this. These are my cosmos. Aren't they great? They're really strong, really sturdy. But if I leave them in here for any length of time, then they'll start to get etiolated, which just means they'll grow up all skinny. So I've got to move them on now, which means moving each one into a separate little container of its own. Now, what every seed does when it germinates is, first of all, put down a root. Well, you can't see that stage. The first evidence you've got is when these little shoots come up and they've got twin leaves. You call them cotyledon leaves, but people often call them seed leaves. And all seedlings do this. When you're picking up your seedlings, never ever pick them up by the stem, by the true leaf that's at the top, or any other bit. Just use these lovely seed leaves, because they are dispensable, so even if you break them, it won't harm the plant. going down and just lowering this into this hole. Then I use the other end of the chopstick just to push that down and firm it in. I'm glad we came in here because it started to rain, so it's a really lovely job to do when you can't work outside. After a shower of grit for my seedlings, there's a much needed break in the rain, meaning I can get on in the spring sunshine. It's so exciting. Spring is the perfect time for this particular form of making more plants for free. I'm talking about division. It's just a question of pulling a plant apart and making more of it. And the plant I'm going to start with is one of the easiest to do. It's called rudbeckia. In the late summer and autumn, this whole place is glowing yellow with the flowers from this, but right now it's just small and green and perfect to divide. If I delve in here, tug a few pieces up. So I've got several pieces there and they're really easy to separate. So that is going to make a whole new plant and it'll have several flowers just this year. So I want a few pieces like that. And the great thing about dividing things is it's not just wonderful as far as making new plants, but it also helps reinvigorate the plant. There are 2 times during the year when it's great to divide plants. One is the autumn and one is right now in the spring. So for anything that flowers late, spring is always the best time. And equally, for anything that flowers early, divide it in the autumn. But this is going to be divided right now. It's Helenium eldorado. It's got bright, sunny yellow flowers and lovely sort of velvety doorknob centres in bronze. It's gorgeous. I'm just going to pull the whole thing out onto this sack. I didn't put that down for you. No, that's for the Helenium. Here we go. Right. If, like me, you've got really heavy soil and it's been pouring down with rain, you probably find that you've brought a bit too much soil with you. So in order to see what I'm doing, I'm going to actually immerse those roots and try and wash most of that soil away. Everybody likes playing in mud, don't they? And all I want to do now is literally pull rosettes from here. And can you see what comes out? So that's exactly what you're aiming at. Some plants are too big to separate with hands, like this daylily. But there's a tried and tested technique that works without too much wrestling involved. Well, this is a very traditional way of dividing plants. It's called back-to-back forks. So the first thing you do is keep your clump of plants absolutely vertical if you can, straight down. And then it's really vital that they are back-to-back. Push in and prise them apart. Look at that. 2 lovely big chunks. And now I think those would make nice plants just as they are. And just before the next shower, these clumps of hemerocallis or daylilies will provide a free rainbow of colour across the garden by the summer. Something to really look forward to. Just look at this! treasure, isn't it? Absolutely loads and loads of plants, all for free. And I'm going to plant a whole load of them into this little bed. But even if you haven't got that, I'm going to plant a whole load of stuff into this pot here. So if you've got a courtyard or a balcony or anything, you're just growing things in a pot, then you can do exactly the same thing. It's lovely, really, because it's quite cold at the moment, and you really feel that you're going to tuck these things in, and they're going to be all warm and comfortable. And then move your soil back over and firm in. I always like using my knuckles. Well, our seeds are coming along fine, and we've divided all sorts of plants, but next time we're going to be doing one of the most exciting forms of propagation, of making plants for free, and that is taking cuttings. Can't wait.
That reminds me, I've got cosmos that I need to prick out. And the one thing I've learnt over the years, when it comes to seedlings and pricking out and potting on and planting out, is that timing is essential. If you can get that right, then the plants will grow well, and then they'll be healthy, then they will resist disease and predation, and the whole thing goes swimmingly. Now, it's time to plant sweet corn. Sweet corn is a symbol of summer, if anything is. And if you plant sweet corn now, it should be ready to plant out round about the end of May and harvest end of July into August onwards. This is a variety called Swift, which is fairly early to crop. It doesn't have the biggest cobs, but they're very sweet and delicious. And you can see the seeds are really big and easy to handle. So just push one in, like that. Use plugs rather than the seed tray, because sweet corn are big plants with a fairly long root. There we go, pop those back in there. And I will cover these over lightly with a little bit more compost. The vermiculite would do the job just as well. Level that off. A label. Now, they do need at least 20 degrees in order to germinate. If you're putting them on a windowsill, make sure it's above a radiator. If you've got a greenhouse, that's great. If you've got a propagator, best of all. Obviously, water them and keep them watered, and they will germinate in about 7 to 10 days' time. Let them grow on, and in about 3 weeks' time, they could be potted on into individual pots. And you know they're ready, and this is all to do with the timing, is when you can just push out one of the plugs and the soil is held together by the roots. And when they're about a foot or so tall, they'll be ready to plant out, which normally will be the end of May, beginning of June. Now, I thought that I grew a lot of tulips here at Longmeadow, but we went down to visit a garden in West Sussex, where they grow tulips on the grandest scale imaginable.
It is amazing with tulips because, of course, they look like nothing's going to happen, and then they form these wonderful heads, and you wait and you wait in anticipation, and then suddenly they burst through. It's just wonderful to see all this vibrant colour after a long winter. I'm Martin Duncan, I'm the head gardener at Arundel Castle and the landscape designer. This is an incredibly special time of year because, of course, It's a great opportunity for us to show off all our hard work, which we started in November, planting absolutely thousands, hundreds of thousands of bulbs up slopes in pots everywhere. And actually we only finish our planting just as Christmas arrives. Some of our early tulips look amazing, and then of course the mid tulips then follow suit, and then the later tulips. So it just looks wonderful. For at least 3 to 4 weeks we have this cacophony of colour. Well, these are just beautiful tulips, pink impression, and they look like water lilies, which then reflect in this water rill. Pink impression has such a large flower head that even when it stops flowering and all the petals drop off, you have this beautiful seed head to look at. These are blue diamond, Mount Tacoma, and we've just got those angelique about to burst forth. Because they're soft colours, they work so well with the pink impression and give that beautiful reflection on the water. The perennial tulips I find which come back year after year are the Darwin hybrids and even the lily-flowered tulips. There are some incredibly extravagant tulips which are wonderful, however, they tend not to come back as readily, so they will come back, but they do digress and get a lot smaller. So originally there was a grass labyrinth, but with nothing in it, so rather boring. I decided let's go for it. So we put in about 14,000 tulips and 14,000 triandus white thalia narcissi. To get the bulbs in, we have what we call pogo sticks, but it has a planter on the bottom. It's not only spectacular, but also it encourages the wildlife into it as well, because we're not continuously cutting lawns. The very important thing with tulips, before you grow a tulip or you're buying a tulip, you must always look at it, make sure it's got no blemishes and that it's a reasonable size. And the important thing with tulips is they like a well-drained soil, and they like to be planted at least 4 inches deep into the soil, and that will mean more chance of coming back in a healthier plant. Well, these are the tropical borders, and yeah, it's amazing to think that you can actually use tulips in a tropical border. We've got these amazing Olympic flame and perestroika, El Nino, in amongst other plants which are just coming through, Persicaria, red dragon. Then we've got Trachycarpus fortunii, these amazing palms. Anybody at home could do this, whether it's in a hot border or in a nice soft herbaceous border. I love using a natural style of planting when I do tulips. So whether it's in herbaceous borders, that is natural swaths, or in the landscape, even more importantly, I throw them up in the air. Where they land, that's where we plant them. There's nothing worse than seeing straight lines in a landscape. We're in the stumpery and I'm planting this incredible plant called the rasta parrot. I potted this on earlier in November. The advantage of having a pot already with a plant, of course, you can then fill in gaps or to enhance the area. In this bed, we have all the stumps, but surrounding them, we have a lot of woodland plants, and we've got the species tulips. They were from the hillsides of Turkey, Afghanistan, Iran. Those were the original tulips where we get our tulips from today. We have Cynthia, and we've also got Beccarii, lilac wonder. They'll come back year after year. And of course, in a woodland setting, they would have had a lot of leaf mold. So what I do here is we bring in leaf mold and place it all around the stumps. This is definitely something you could achieve in a back garden, because if you think about it, just do it in a mini form. You could certainly do this in a rockery, and it would fit in perfectly. Tulips are fantastic in pots. You half fill the pot, and then as long as you plant, you then place all your tulips really very close, cheek by jowl, and then you top up with 4 inches of compost. You can either use a liquid fertilizer or liquid seaweed, or you can put in a slow release fertilizer with the compost. But the important thing, you really must water them. So once they start showing heads, don't forget to water them. Once they die right down, then lift them and then clean off the bulb and store them like you would an onion in the dark on a tray, and then put them in a bag. Once you've cleaned them off properly, you can then replant in the autumn. I never tire of these colours. I mean, impossible. I look at it and I just think, wow, spring has really arrived, and it just gives you a lovely start to the year.
The Tulip Festival continues to the end of the month at Arundel Castle, so do go along, and all the details can be got from our website. Now, I'm watering this because even though it's been a very showery day, it's important that this doesn't dry out. So unless there's significant rain, give it a good soak every day. Once the roots have grown, they can take moisture from the soil, and you'll know the roots have grown because the grass will grow. And don't tread on it until you make that first cut, and that will be when there is significant growth. Now, still to come on today's programme. We meet a gardener for whom the colour and beauty of plants are crucial, but the names not so much.
My favourite flower is delphiniums, because the height and the different colours. All I can tell you, not by name but by colour. The blues, very sky blue ones, the dark blues.
And Adam goes to Dublin, where he meets the U2 bassist Adam Clayton in his garden.
What does gardening give you?
Well, it takes my mind out of myself. You know, I start to see the colours, I start to see the form, I start to note the time of year, and I just go into a different world.
This area has had a revamp, focusing on fragrance. The idea is this is going to be somewhere to sit when the weather gets better, if it ever gets better, where we can sit particularly in the evening and really just be surrounded by a balm of lovely scents. And so I just want to continue building up that repertoire of really good fragrance. And I've got climbing plant, both the same. This is Trachelospermum, star jasmine, and they will grow really quickly and should be smothered in the lovely, small, white, deeply fragrant flowers. And it is one of the most voluptuous scents that you can have in the garden. Now you can see that this star jasmine has got evergreen leaves, whereas our normal jasmine at the back is deciduous, and that will develop its leaves very soon. Now I'm going to take these bamboos out. Just firm that in. Now the thing about Trachelospermum is it wants to climb. It wants to come right up, and I've seen star jasmine growing 20 foot up in the air. So you do need to give it a substantial support. So what I have are bean sticks. If you can't get bean sticks, just think of some alternative that will reach at very least about 8 foot and be strong enough to take the weight and be permanent. Bamboo for Trachelospermum just simply isn't going to be big enough. Okay, tie that up. I love tarred twine, and it reminds me of my childhood when we always had a ball of tarred twine on the shelf. The smell is very evocative and it lasts. Right. All I have to do now is with soft twine, tie the Trachelospermum into the supports, give it a soak, and I am trusting that before long there will be a sunny day and the rain will stop and this will be smothered in wonderfully fragrant white flowers. Now, last summer, on a beautiful summer's day, we went just outside Bristol to visit Jim McGill in his garden.
I love all the bright colours. It just gives you peace of mind when you come out every day and look at it, which I come out every morning. Do a bit of watering, a bit of potting on, and just feel relaxed. That smells absolutely gorgeous. Hello, my name's Jim. I've been here with my wife Carol for 55 years. People say, oh, you can't put this plant alongside that plant. That doesn't bother me. If I got pink alongside something else, that's where it's going. That's it. That plant's going in there. I got the pot in my hand, it's going in there. And that is how I garden. I've got delphiniums with pink foxgloves, red poppies. What a fantastic colour range it is there, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. Doesn't matter about whether they match up with each other, it's just colour. My favourite flower is delphiniums, because the height and the different colours. All I can tell you, not by name but by colour. The blues, very sky blue ones, the dark blues, and the centres of them, you get the white on some of them, cream in the centre, and the black in the centres. And they're good for the bees love them. Hopefully one day I'll get them like the Chelsea Flower Show and get myself a gold. This is a delphinium, which is more of a purple colour, which a dark centre to it. It's a really nice colour on this, and it is nice and bushy. Now, when this is finished flowering on this here, I would cut right down at the bottom of the stalk, and then we'll get a second flush this year. You sow the seeds, take the seeds off. They're fresh then, you get them like at the end of the season, say September, put them in these deep trays and let them grow up. They'll come up about this tall, and then lead them for the winter, and they'll die back, put the glass over the top to protect them, and then in the spring start watering them and give them a feed. I then pot them on, and this is what they've come to so far. Some of them's got the flowers on as well. Have I got a lot of seeds? Yes, too many. There's better greenhouses about than what this is. A bit of a mess in here. Look at the foxglove seeds in there, look. Loads of them. Give them away. My fallen in love poppies, look at the seeds in there. Lots of seeds. This is my delphinium seeds from 2021. I've got delphinium seeds from 2022. I've got some holes in the top to let them vent, keep them nice and dry. I can remember when I was about 4 or 5 going into the shed, and there was some plants hanging up from the roof. And I said to my dad, why have you got those dead flowers hanging up in there? And he said, this wallflowers, he said, and I put them up there so that they'd dry out and I can get the seeds off of them. And that was the first time I realised, you know, you could grow your own plants from the seeds you collected. And that taught me a lesson then, you know, right from young. He was good at gardening, my dad. I used to spend my time with him gardening.
Well, everything he does on a big scale. He don't do half measures, Jim. When he plants seeds, he can't plant half a packet, he's got to plant the whole packet. And then he says, I've planted too many. And he does that every time he plants a whole lot. All the roses, they all come out beautiful now, aren't they? All the way along to the kitchen. You go to a garden centre, there's nothing to spend 60, 70 pounds in. You come out with about 6 plants, whereas now we got, well, too many now.
Or we give them away.
Yeah.
I bought 3 clematises, and there's £3 each, and brought them back and put them into the bigger pots. And the deeper pots, you get a nice root ball growing down in there. But when I plant them, I'll plant them right up to about here and give them a good chance. So they'll have a nice root ball on there when they go in the ground. If you buy them small and pot them on yourself, then you've got the same plants but for a lot cheaper. I got these lovely, lovely geraniums. Some people call them pelargoniums, and I absolutely loved them. And from buying them for just these little pots like this, and then putting them into 3-inch pots to get them like this now, and they're looking really healthy. Nature, when it first started off, there weren't no rules, was there, you know? When life began and plants started to grow, and wasn't a rule book and say you can do this, you can't do that, you know? It just grew. And if you do it, the world ain't going to stop going around, is it? You know, it'll grow, it'll come out of it, a flower, and I'll be happy.
Well, I love Jim's garden. That's how a garden should be. Now this is a dahlia called David Howard. It's one of my favourites. It's got a rich sort of burnt orange flower and dark foliage. But rather like tulips, dahlias can be very variable in their ability to come back year on year. So it's a very good idea to take cuttings. And dahlias reproduce really well from cuttings. Now, I've forced this, which means that I potted it up and then put it in the greenhouse so it was warm, kept it well watered, and that has made it grow much faster than other dahlias that are either still outside in the garden or have been potted on and put somewhere relatively cool. So we've got nice, good growth, and cuttings are best anything from between 2 and 6 inches. So this is absolutely perfect. Now, you need a sharp knife for cuttings, and particularly so for dahlias, because what you want to do is nick a little bit of the tuber. So when you're potting them up for cuttings, don't bury them deep. Put the tubers so you can just see them above the surface. And slip it on the inside of the stem and go down until you can feel the tuber, and then just cut it off. There we go. And that is one, and I'm going to take 2 from this. So get the knife in again, go on down until I can go no further, and then cut. Right, we'll put that to one side. Now with the cutting, if you've got all that leaf, that will transpire and lose a lot of moisture before it can grow roots to feed it. So if we just cut these leaves off close to the stem, that will allow time for roots to grow and give it new life. Right, that's our cut material. Now you can see what I've got here is pure perlite. because I've found over the years that perlite actually is one of the best mediums for taking cuttings of any sort in. Because when you're taking a cutting, it doesn't need any nutrition at all. What it needs is oxygen and water. Now what I will use is one of these which will help me make a hole. And just in one corner, I'm going to put this one like that. And in the other corner, this one here. Top it up with a bit more perlite. Now, I will water that, and either you can put it in a mist propagator if you've got such a thing, or you could mist it with a hand mister 2 or 3 times a day, or you can use one of these polythene bags, and they do work incredibly well. Put it over the top of the pot, and then just tighten it. Having watered it first, and what you'll find is that as the foliage transpires, the water is collected on the polythene and keeps the air moist. And you'll find that actually dahlia cuttings grow roots very quickly. They will start to grow roots within a week or so and be ready to pot on after about 3 to 4 weeks into compost, which has nutrition. Then the young plant will grow strongly. But for the moment, we just want those roots to form. Now, last month, Adam went to Dublin to visit the garden of rock royalty, and he found it full of flower.
Would you believe I'm only a few miles outside of Dublin city centre, in this sort of remote river valley that's a backdrop to an incredibly stunning garden. But 30 odd years ago, this place was going to rack and ruin. And then the current owner moved in. And it was at that point, this got a whole new lease of life. You may be surprised who the custodian of this garden is. I am. I've watched him over the years a lot, but most of the time he's been on a stage with a guitar. It's U2's Adam Clayton. Yeah, he's rock and roll royalty, but I got the sense he knows a little bit about gardening too. I walked in and instantly got goosebumps. You have created something here that is magical.
Well, I think this is an adolescent garden in reality. You know, I've put 30 years into planting and shaping it, and it's, you know, I can just see what it's going to be. I might not be around for it, but I can see where it's headed.
Take you right back to the beginning. How did this all start?
Well, the very beginning was, for me, I went to a boarding school at the age of 13, which is literally over the other field there. And I used to kind of look over the wall and come in here, and, you know, the early days of smoking cigarettes and having a drink. I'd come in here and there was this lovely little river that ran through it. Anyway, fast forward to, we're looking for somewhere to record the Joshua Tree, and our management picked this house, and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is like one step over from my boarding school. How weird to come back here. So we recorded the album here, and at the end of the recording, the owner said, look, if any of the band want to buy the house, you know, I'd be up to taking the cost of the rental off the house.
Right.
And I thought, oh, there's a bit of a deal there. And I didn't really know what I had, but I knew that whatever happened after the Joshua Tree, I did not want to be walking out my front door into a street.
Yeah, because interesting, because I mean, that album, it was the bit that brought you to the world, wasn't it?
We had an inkling.
Yeah.
You know, we'd been around for a little bit, we'd done a few records, so we had an idea that we were onto something.
Yeah.
But I don't think we knew how it was going to change our lives.
So you've done that. You're 28 years old, was it right?
27, 28, yeah.
Bought the house. Had you gardened before?
I had a very, very sketchy knowledge of gardening. The only thing I knew about it was that I found solace outside, and I knew the mountain here. There's a mountain up the back here, and I used to go up that mountain with my teenage depression and look down over the city. So I knew I could get something from it.
But when you took it on, what sort of state was this place in?
It was seriously over-mature. It had been let go. The woodlands were overrun with laurel, which was kind of suffocating everything. So we took on clearing the laurel out, and then we could see the bones of the garden.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of reconstruction to the river. But I realized if I planted trees, at some point I could make decisions later on. I just love the creation of forestry, you know, just planting trees and seeing it grow. And I mean, these trees are now 30 years old.
Since Adam took the garden under his creative wing, he's completely transformed its 17 acres, planting more than 4,000 trees and establishing some wonderful vistas. Seriously, I'm like a kid in a sweet shop. This is magical. I mean, obviously it's fun coming across this bridge, but when Adam got here, simple little river, few big trees, and then lots of laurel. And it's really clever, the way that he's introduced different types of falls as it goes down. It feels like the heartbeat to the garden. There's a rhythm. But the trees that he's added look so natural. It still looks like it's been here forever. There's tree ferns just through. It literally feels like another world. Throughout the garden, Adam's introduced over 50 varieties of camellia, which provide so much wonderful colour. Another passion of his are magnolias. By the river, there's the soft pink of Magnolia camelliae, and next to the lawn, a row of Magnolia cobus, native to Japan, with fragrant white flowers. How did magnolias suck you in?
Well, I first saw them in a valley in Mount Congreve, which is down in Waterford, and I couldn't believe the colour that you would see at the top of the tree line. The only magnolia I knew was the little suburban common or garden one that my mum, you know, cherished and planted, and every year she said, "Look at the magnolia, it's great."
And then we'd normally get a frost.
Yeah.
Like.
So then when I discovered these magnificent tree magnolias and the array of different colours, I was hooked. And for me, coming out of winter, you get that early flowering, you get that burst of colour, and then I kind of know, okay, summer's coming. And then I love rhododendrons, they're fantastic. Even when they're not in flower, the leaf colour is great. Funnily enough, I went to the Himalayas. I was on a trekking holiday, and I was up in the hills, and then I got to see them in their natural habitat. And I just thought, it's amazing. These things from this other culture and this other country come here, and they bring a little bit of that with them.
This garden is a delight. Even on the dullest days, the colours are shining through, both in the formal gardens by the house and the woodland by the river. Testament to Adam's creative eye. The task of bringing Adam's vision to life rests on the shoulders of Dara Stone, who became head gardener here 4 years ago. Who's the assistant, mate?
The assistant head gardener is Holly.
Holly?
Is the main girl.
This is not a bad office, is it?
No, not the worst.
So before you came, did you love magnolias, rhododendrons or camellias?
I love plants, you know, I love plants. That's the main thing. I was a big rhodo head, but being here, like, you've got magnolias that flower from early March all the way through to July. So there's always a magnolia kind of going, something to kind of keep your attention. And then they're not just flowers, like they're not just the flower. They've got the beautiful flower bud comes in early spring and now through winter, and then it kind of goes on, and they've got good autumn colour. I think they're a good solid plant.
To be fair, he sold them to me as well.
Yeah.
Because he's got a good eye, hasn't he?
He has an impressive eye, yeah.
You know, you can see it when you feel it when you're walking around a place. There's, you know, I suppose over the years, but has he sort of placed all the seats or the sculpture, or is that driven by him?
Yeah, everything, even ideas and everything. He comes out and it's every day, it's a new idea, it's every morning, it's, oh, Dara, I was thinking, and it's a new kind of, it's a new approach to something.
That's lovely though, isn't it?
Yeah.
As, you know, for us as gardeners, just that constant keep things moving along.
And to work for somebody who's into it as well, you know?
Yeah. This to me just seems like a sort of microclimate in this valley.
Yeah, It's very impressive. So
Yeah.
because of the moisture of the river, the heavy rainfall that we do get, the microclimate that that is created in here, the growth rate is exceptional. It's got a unique charm.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, well, if you ever think about taking on an assistant,
Right.
a slightly Asian one, you know,
How's your
you
weeding
could give me a
skills?
call. Weeding's all right,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
weeding's all
we'll
right. You could
talk
set me
about it.
away,
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
fine.
This is what I call my greatest hits walk.
Yeah.
I come out of the house in the morning and I walk up the other side, up to the top waterfall, and then come down here. And that way I get everything that I need. And I don't know what it is about the fresh water, but whether it ionizes the air or something, it sets you up for the day.
What does gardening give you?
Well, it takes my mind out of myself. You know, I start to see the colors, I start to see the form, I start to note the time of year, and I just go into a different world. I think the garden tells you what it needs, and you just have to pay attention. And I do look at gardening the way the painters do. You know, it's shape, form, color, and perspective, depth. So I just bring all those things to it, and I just let the garden lead me.
If you look back at your life and I suppose in some sense the madness of it, this is an incredible antidote to that.
I feel I'm lucky because it was all instinctive. I didn't know what this would mean to me. I didn't know that this would be a place that would draw me back and give me such kind of peace.
This really is some place. I feel like I'm smiling on the inside. But to think that Adam took this on in his late 20s, I get a sense that the place sucked him in. Then he fell in love with magnolias, rhododendrons, camellias. When it's not just a great garden, it's also fun, it's intelligent, it sits comfortably in its landscape. But as a gardener, I've spent years watching you two and Adam Clayton on a stage. To think that he gets gardening, for me, is pretty cool.
Come on, Ned. Something that Adam Clayton said really resonates, and I agree with so much. And that is the most important thing to create a garden is to pay attention. And if you really pay attention to the garden and let it speak to you, then it will tell you what it needs and what it wants. So it's fantastic advice, that. Pay attention. Now, here on the mound, I did an experiment last year, which was to plant cannas and dahlias and bananas and leave them out all winter. The first time I've ever done that. And the reason for it was because it was costing me so much to heat them and protect them from the cold, and that was contributing to climate change, which was contributing to the extremity of cold and the extremity of wet. And I just thought, this is a nonsense. So I'm going to leave them out. Now, underneath here are cannas that have been mulched, and they are coming through. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they're alive. And I fleeced the banana here. Now, this is a musa, which is fairly hardy. It will take some frost, not a lot. And we did have -7 in December. But for the last 3 months, it's just rained constantly. Bananas don't mind the wet, they like the wet. But they do need ventilation, so I'm slightly worried it might be rotten in there. And the combination of wet and cold is not good. So it is a bit of a gamble. You thought that was the only layer, didn't you? Oh, there's life in that. Look, look. green. That is fresh green leaf, so that's good news. It's survived, it's come through the winter. Great. Well, I've got another one on the other side, so I'll get on with that. But while I'm doing that, here are your jobs for the weekend. For most of us, it's too wet and too cold to plant out climbing or runner bean seeds. But they can be grown in pots now. I'm putting 2 to each 3-inch pot, covering them over lightly with compost, and then putting them somewhere warm to germinate. Water them well and keep them watered, and they should be ready to plant out, having hardened off, in about 6 weeks' time. If you've grown daffodils in pots or in borders, it's a good idea to cut off the seed heads, as this will take goodness away from the bulb and therefore from the effectiveness of next year's flowering. If, on the other hand, you've got daffodils growing in long grass, let them seed freely, and this will speed up their spread. Early spring flowering shrubs like forsythia should be pruned as soon as they finish flowering. This is because the flowers are produced on the growth made the previous summer, and it means that everything you see now will not have flowers next year. So remove anything unsightly, damaged or crossing, anything that's too long or too spindly, and then when you're happy, leave it to grow.
It's a bit wet, isn't it?
Well, for all our busyness in the garden and the need to get on and do things, there are some things you just simply can't control, like the weather, and clearly that is a really good example. And also, if there is a moment of sunshine, if you've got a few minutes for your time, it still remains that the best thing you can ever do in a garden is just let it come to you. Just enjoy it for what it is right now. That's nearly it for this week, but I just want to share the Paradise Garden with you because the blossom of the crabapple Everest is at its best, and also the acuminata tulips. These are the tulips that are very spidery, the petals tall and almost sort of wispy. And there is this real sense that the Paradise Garden has seen through the winter and the wet spring and is now opening out into its full glory. That's it for today. Next week, we're with Adam in his garden. And I'll see you back here at Longmeadow in a couple of weeks' time. So until then, bye-bye.